There was a kind of sharpness in the air that night, like the city itself was holding its breath. He didn't mean to arrive late. Actually, he debated whether to show up at all. The show was something Jessica had hyped for weeks, her big, I'm totally not nervous debut at a downtown comedy night. She'd been jittery for days, rehearsing in front of the bathroom mirror, laughing alone in the kitchen, her phone lighting up with texts from someone named Stacy a little too often. He knew something was off. Eric pulled into the lot 5 minutes after it had started. His hands stayed on the steering wheel longer than necessary. The engine ticked quietly. He sat there, headlights off, staring at the entrance of the little brick bar nestled between a vape shop and a taco place that never seemed to close. Inside, laughter boomed. Someone banged a table. His heart ticked like a slow metronome. He got out. No fanfare. No deep breath. Just a grim shuffle toward the door where a guy with a clipboard barely looked up before waving him in. It was already too late. Inside, the lights were low. The crowd was thick with strangers leaning into one another, their faces lit by the stage and the occasional phone screen. Eric stayed at the back, in the shadows, watching as she held court up front like she was born on stage. Hair loose and wild, eyes gleaming, glass of wine in her hand like it was part of her outfit. And that laugh, his wife's laugh, echoed like a blade drawn in public. So I told him, if you're gonna text your mom that much, maybe marry her, she said, and the room erupted. Eric didn't laugh. He didn't flinch either. But something in him shifted. Like drywall starting to crack under pressure it wasn't meant to carry. Then she said it. And you know what's really sexy? A man who knows when to stay out of your messages. Boom. It landed like a grenade. The laughter was louder this time. Applause. That one guy near the front, dark blue sweater, leaned back like he belonged in her story, let out a whistle. Too comfortable. Too smug. Eric watched the moment her eyes drifted past the crowd, looking for the reserved seat with his name on it. It was empty. That's when she saw him standing in the back. No smile. No drink. Just staring. Her face faltered for a split second. Then the mask returned. She tossed her hair. Said something snarky about needing thicker skin if you're gonna be with a funny woman. And the audience laughed again, blind to the tremor behind her voice. Eric turned and left before the set ended. He didn't speed home. He didn't cry. He just drove with one hand on the wheel, the other on his thigh, fingers twitching like they were searching for something to hold onto. The silence in the car was louder than the bar. Back home, the house felt sterile. Lights off. Mail on the counter. The hallway smelled faintly of that lavender spray she used when she didn't want to shower but wanted it to seem like she had. He sat on the edge of the bed. The clock blinked 10:46 p.m. He stared at her phone charger. A threadbare thing she kept beside her pillow. The screen of her iPad lit up for a second in the dark. A text? You killed it, face-blowing kiss. From a contact named C. He didn't touch it. He didn't need to. The door opened exactly 18 minutes later. Keys jangled. Her heels tapped on the tile, loud, decisive, like someone declaring their presence. She walked in with a flush to her cheeks and a hum in her throat. She didn't see him until she flicked on the hallway light. Eric, she blinked. You're home already? He didn't answer. She tilted her head, smile twitching. What? You left early. Still silence. She stepped forward, wine still in her breath. What's the deal, babe? It was just jokes. Eric stood slowly, his face unreadable. And finally he spoke, low, flat. Who's C? She froze. And that's where it really began. Her body stiffened like she'd been caught stepping out of someone else's skin. The hallway light carved a shadow across her face, slicing it into two expressions, confusion and something else, something that moved too quickly to name. See, she repeated, too fast, too loud. You're spying on my messages now? Eric didn't move. Didn't blink. I didn't touch your phone, he said. It lit up. That's all. She laughed, sharp and defensive. God, Eric. It's probably Courtney. Or Caleb. You're being paranoid again. Paranoid again. He'd heard that phrase more times in the last 6 months than he had in their entire marriage. It was her favorite armor, make him feel crazy, make him doubt what he already knew. He turned away and walked into the kitchen, flicked on the light. The sink was full of lipstick-stained wine glasses. One of them still had a faint fingerprint near the rim. She followed. I killed it tonight, she said, voice tight. People loved me. And instead of being proud of me, you're in here sulking like I cheated on you or something. The silence hit harder this time. I asked you who C is, Eric said again, slower. She scoffed. You're acting like a lunatic. Do you hear yourself? You're interrogating me over a text emoji. He looked at her, then really looked, and noticed the trembling in her hands. The slight stagger in her weight. The eyes that wouldn't land. I saw you wink at him, he said quietly. The guy in the front row. Navy sweater. You look right at him. Jessica's mouth opened, but nothing came out. A pause stretched between them like rubber. Then she said, "You're jealous of a fan now? Is that where we're at? You couldn't even clap for me and now you're inventing some romance novel subplot with a random dude in the audience. Do you know how you sounded up there?" he asked, the words scraping his throat. "Do you even hear yourself anymore?" Her eyes narrowed. "I was performing. It's called a bit, Eric. Grow up." He walked past her toward the bedroom. She didn't follow immediately, but he heard her footsteps later, softer this time. Hesitant. When she came in, she sat on the edge of the bed like a teenager waiting for a scolding. He didn't look at her. Just pulled off his shirt and folded it neatly out of habit more than anything. "I'm not stupid," he said after a long while. "I never said you were." "Then stop treating me like I am." Jessica looked at her knees. "There's nothing going on." A beat passed. "But there was, wasn't there?" he said. "That did it." Her shoulders tightened. She looked up, mask dropped. Not vulnerable, cornered. "It was nothing," she said. "One time. A stupid mistake. Months ago. I ended it." Eric's heart didn't stop. It didn't even skip. It just went quiet, like it had turned inward to listen. "Who is he?" She looked away. "See?" A nod. He felt his body shift back, like the air had just gone too thin. "And you made jokes about me tonight?" "I didn't think you'd be there," she whispered. And somehow that hit worse than the cheating. You don't write someone out of a public story unless you've already deleted them from your private one. Eric stood. Walked to the door. This time she didn't stop him. He didn't sleep that night. He just drove. Nowhere in particular. Just away. Every time he stopped at a red light, her words played back in his head. It was nothing. But it wasn't. It was everything. He parked at a 24-hour diner just off I-93, one of those outdated joints with torn vinyl booths and a buzzing neon sign that read "Open like a dare." The place was nearly empty. Just a waitress wiping down counters and a trucker half asleep over a bowl of chili. Eric sat in the corner, ordered coffee he wouldn't drink, and stared out the window. The rain had started while he was driving, soft at first, then thick and loud, slapping the windshield like it had something to say. Her voice was still playing on a loop in his head. "I didn't think you'd be there. That was it. That was the core. Not the cheating. Not the lies. Not even the wink. It was the planning around his absence. The quiet choice to perform without the man she married in the room, to curate a new version of herself, one that didn't include him. He didn't want to go home. By 3:30 a.m. he was still there, the same cup of coffee now cold and ignored. He opened his phone and scrolled aimlessly until he hit the search bar. Then, without thinking, without planning, he typed, "How to tell if your wife is still cheating." The answers weren't satisfying, but they confirmed one thing: he wasn't crazy. At 7:12 a.m., after a shower at the gym and a drive that felt longer than it was, Eric stepped back into his own house. She was awake, sitting in the kitchen with her laptop open, pretending to scroll through emails, makeup barely touched. The TV was on mute. The morning news flickered in the background. She looked up. He didn't say a word. Just walked to the bedroom and began opening drawers. She followed. "What are you doing?" she asked, voice tight. "Packing." "For what?" "I need space." Her face hardened. "You can't just." "I can. I am." A long silence fell between them. Then the shift. "You're overreacting," she said. "We can talk about this like adults." Eric zipped the duffel shut. "You had your talk. It was on stage." "That wasn't real," she snapped. "Those were jokes, Eric. And you admitted to cheating." "That wasn't a joke. You said you forgave me for that." "No. You told me I did." She flinched. And he saw something he hadn't seen in months: panic. He walked past her again, duffel slung over his shoulder, keys in hand. No yelling. No slammed doors. Just the ghost of a marriage following him down the hallway like a cold draft. She didn't chase him. He stayed with his cousin Brian for the next 3 nights, a small one-bedroom apartment with a couch that made his back ache. Brian didn't ask questions. Just handed him a beer, nodded, and turned on some game neither of them really watched. On the 4th night, Jessica called. He didn't pick up. On the 5th, she showed up. Knocked twice. No doorbell. When he opened it, she looked smaller somehow. Less composed. "I messed up," she said quietly. "But you're blowing this up like we're strangers." Eric didn't reply. "I miss you," she added. He looked her straight in the eye. "I miss the version of you who wasn't lying to me." She blinked, stepped back like he'd slapped her. And he closed the door. She didn't knock again. The next morning, he found her voicemail in his inbox. Her voice was soft, rehearsed. Like someone reading a script written by guilt. "Eric. I get it. I really do. I betrayed you and that's on me. But if you still love me, if you think there's anything worth saving here, call me back. Please. He didn't delete it. Not right away. But he didn't call her back either. By now Eric had developed a routine: wake up sore on Brian's couch, pretend to scroll job listings he didn't need, nurse a burnt cup of coffee, and replay that night over and over. The stage lights. The audience. The way her voice dipped when she flirted through a joke about him. The wink. And most of all, the text from C. That smug little kiss emoji burned brighter than anything else. By day 7, the silence between them wasn't silence anymore, it was strategy. He could feel her trying to wait him out. Jessica had always been a woman who thought she could negotiate with reality. If she just waited long enough, smiled just right, cried on cue, the world would bend. But he wasn't bending this time. He needed answers. Not the soft, vague nonsense she was feeding him. Not another "it was a mistake." If she thought she could gaslight her way back into good graces, she didn't know him at all. So he did something he never thought he'd do. He called Kevin. Kevin was an old friend from their college days. Loud, crass, too obsessed with fantasy football, but fiercely loyal. And more importantly, he still kept tabs on everyone. Including mutuals Jessica had quietly distanced herself from once she started finding herself. Eric barely said hello before Kevin jumped in. "I was wondering when you'd call." "What do you know?" Eric asked, straight to the point. Kevin sighed. "You want the polite version or the real one?" "Real. There's a guy. Corey Jensen. Works at her gym. Runs one of those influencer side hustles. Motivational bullsh *T on Instagram. I've seen her in his photos." Eric's grip on the phone tightened. "Photos?" "Yeah. In the background mostly. But they hang out. A lot. And this was before that open mic crap. Months ago." "You didn't know?" Eric said nothing. Kevin kept going. "Look, man. I didn't want to interfere. I figured she'd grow out of it." He hung up before Kevin could say more. "Corey." "See, of course." Eric didn't confront her. Not yet. He needed to see for himself. That night, he drove to the gym, the same one she used to drag him to every other Saturday until she needed more solo time. He parked across the street, engine off, eyes locked on the glass doors like they might confess something. At 6:42 p.m. she walked out. Not alone. Corey followed. Tall, overstyled, one of those guys who probably smelled like expensive deodorant and Instagram filters. He said something. She laughed. Then they hugged. Not the kind of hug you give a gym buddy. The kind that lingers. The kind where you forget the world is watching. Eric didn't get out of the car. He just watched her get into Corey's passenger seat like it was the most natural thing in the world. That was the moment. The one where something snapped. Not rage. Not grief. Clarity. It was over. Not in the dramatic way she expected, with yelling and crying and accusations. No, it ended in a parking lot under the soft buzz of a streetlight, with her sliding into another man's car like she'd rehearsed it. Eric turned the key. Pulled away. And didn't look back. Eric didn't go back to Brian's that night. Instead, he drove to a motel on the edge of town, one of those outdated places with flickering ice machines and carpets that hadn't seen a steam cleaner since the 90s. He didn't need luxury. He needed silence. The kind that wrapped around your ribs and let you feel every inch of the emptiness you'd been denying for too long. The room smelled faintly of mildew and bleach. He dropped the duffel on the bed, sat in the plastic chair by the window, and stared at his phone. Jessica hadn't texted. Hadn't called. Not even a question mark. Nothing. That meant one thing. She knew he knew. Cowards don't reach out when they've been caught in the middle of their lie collapsing. He should have felt fury. He should have wanted to storm back into that bar, that stage, that moment, and scream the truth until it shattered her carefully built illusion. But all he felt was tired. He hadn't cried. Not once. Not when she confessed. Not when she minimized it. Not even when he watched her crawl into another man's car without a shred of guilt. The crying didn't come. Instead, it was a kind of hollowness, the emotional version of aftershock. Like his heart had evacuated and left behind only echoes of what it used to believe. The next morning, he called a lawyer. He didn't hesitate. Didn't ask about counseling. Didn't stall. "Infidelity," he said, voice even. "Yes, I have proof." The woman on the other end was efficient, clinical. She asked for names. Dates. Documents. He gave her everything. Photos. Screenshots. Dates of gym visits. Her set list from that night. He even handed over the voicemail. The pleas disguised as a trap. When the paperwork came through 2 days later, he printed the forms in the motel's tiny business center. He held them in his hands like he was holding her obituary. She still hadn't called. So he drove to the house. He didn't text. Didn't warn her. When she opened the door and saw him standing there, envelope in hand, her face flickered through 7 expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion. Relief. Guilt. Anger. Then the thing she always leaned on when she was cornered, fake sadness. Eric. He held out the envelope. She didn't take it. What is this? She asked, already knowing. Reality, he said. She looked at it like it was a bomb. You're not serious. I've never been more. You're really gonna throw everything away? Over one mistake? You didn't just cheat, he said. You built a whole world where I was the background character. Her lip trembled, but no tears came. You don't mean this, she tried again. He looked her dead in the eye. I meant every I love you. You just didn't deserve them. He dropped the envelope on the foyer floor and walked away. Behind him, the door didn't close. She stood there silent. Maybe for the first time in her life, Jessica had nothing left to say. Days passed. She didn't contest the divorce. No dramatic plea, no last-minute realization, no fight. She signed the papers and mailed them back like they were just another piece of junk mail. As if their entire marriage could be reduced to a legal formality. Eric stared at the envelope when it arrived at the motel. Her signature sat there in black ink, cold and practiced, with a date scribbled next to it like an afterthought. That's when it hit him. She'd been done long before he knew. Everything started making sense in a backwards kind of way, her constant deflections, her weaponized humor, the way she kept him emotionally at arm's length while pretending to invite him closer. She'd been performing long before that night on stage. That was just the final act. And Corey? He wasn't the reason she left. He was just the excuse she used to make it easier. Eric went back to the house one final time. Not to talk. Not to see her. She wasn't there. Her car was gone and the place felt like a shell of what it had once been. Their wedding photo still hung crooked above the fireplace, a frame filled with 2 people pretending they hadn't already started drifting apart. Her perfume still lingered faintly in the bedroom, haunting the sheets like a bitter ghost. He packed the last of his things in silence. His books. A few clothes. The framed photo of his late mom, the one Jessica always said didn't match the aesthetic. It matched his. In the top drawer of her nightstand, he found it, a card. Unopened. From him. Last year's anniversary. The one she told him she had misplaced. He opened it. His handwriting stared back at him, hopeful and tired. Still choosing you every day? Even when it's hard. Even when it hurts a little. I hope you still choose me too. She never opened it. Never read it. He left it on the nightstand. Not out of spite, out of truth. She could face it now or not at all. Either way, it wasn't his to carry anymore. On his way out, he turned one last time in the hallway, looking at the little scratch on the wall from when they moved in. A stupid scrape from her elbow. They had laughed about it for a week. Now it looked like a scar on the paint. He locked the door, dropped the key in the mailbox, and walked away with no plan, but for the first time in a long time, with no illusion either. No more performing. No more guessing. Just forward. 2 weeks after he left for good, Jessica finally reached out again. A text this time. Short. Pointed. We need to talk. In person. Eric stared at it for a full minute, thumb hovering over the screen like it might catch fire. She didn't deserve more of him. She had taken enough time, patience, faith. But part of him needed closure. Not for her. For himself. A chance to see it all for what it was, stripped of the haze that had kept him waiting for change that would never come. He agreed. They met at a cafe downtown, neutral ground. Bright walls, too many windows, the kind of place people come to pretend things are fine. She wore sunglasses even though it was cloudy. Her nails were freshly done. Her hair, perfect. She looked like someone who wanted control back. He sat down across from her. Didn't smile? Didn't speak first. She started. I've been thinking, she said. About us. About everything. He waited. I made a mistake, she said. But you made it easy. That was her opening line. Eric blinked. Easy? You stopped seeing me. You were always tired, always working, always distracted. I felt invisible. He took a breath. So you cheated. I felt abandoned. And instead of telling me that, you climbed into someone else's bed. She looked away. I didn't plan for it to happen. It just did. He laughed, not loud, but bitter. You planned everything. The lies. The stories. Even the jokes. Jessica leaned forward. You think this was easy for me? I think it was easier than fixing what we had, he said. Silence fell. Outside, a bus hissed to a stop, doors clattering open. I didn't come here to fight, she said eventually. No, he replied. You came here hoping I'd still be the man who forgives you. Her expression cracked then, not from sadness but irritation. So what? You're just done? That's it? I was done the night I saw you laughing with him, he said. The night you made a joke out of me and didn't even have the decency to look sorry. Jessica leaned back. The performance was over. The actress had nothing left to act. You're not as innocent as you think, she muttered. I never claimed to be perfect, he said. But I never left the marriage. You did. Repeatedly. He stood. Tossed a few bills on the table even though he hadn't ordered anything. She didn't stop him. As he walked out into the gray morning, a strange peace settled over him. Not because it didn't hurt, it still did. Deeply. But because he realized something important. He didn't need her apology. He didn't need her reasons. He didn't need her. He just needed to walk, one step then the next, and keep walking until her voice became a memory too distant to hurt. The days that followed felt cleaner, somehow. Not easier, but honest. The lies weren't there anymore to wrestle with. The gaslighting had stopped. The emotional acrobatics, the wondering, the second-guessing gone. In their place was a kind of aching clarity, like sunlight streaming through a house after the fires burned it hollow. Eric moved into a small rental outside the city, a quiet place tucked behind a row of oak trees. No shared closets. No ghostly perfume. Just silence, pure and uninterrupted. The kind that didn't scream at him, didn't remind him of everything she'd taken. He didn't talk about her much. When Brian asked, he just shook his head. When his sister called, he deflected. Not out of shame, but out of self-preservation. He was done keeping her story alive in his mouth. But then she tried again. A manila envelope showed up in his mailbox. No return address. Inside, a handwritten letter in her looping script, folded neatly like it was supposed to be sacred. It read, Eric, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to write back. But I need you to know something. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about me feeling small and unseen for too long. You were always reliable, but never really there. I felt like a roommate, not a wife. And Corey, it wasn't love. It was attention. I was desperate and I did something awful. I own that. But I want to thank you for the years you gave me. For the steadiness. For choosing me even when I didn't deserve it. I hope you find someone who actually knows how to hold that. I wasn't her. I see that now. Jay. He read it once. And then again. And then he tore it in half, not out of anger, but because it didn't belong to him anymore. Her guilt wasn't his to carry. Her insight had come too late, like a rescue ship showing up long after the wreck. He tossed the pieces into the trash and took a long walk, the kind that stretched for hours and didn't lead anywhere in particular. The next day, he booked a solo trip to Maine. Just a weekend, hiking trails, quiet inns, fog rolling in over the coast. Somewhere with no phone signal. Somewhere she never touched. And on the second morning, as he stood at the cliff edge watching the sun rise over the water, Eric felt something unfamiliar bloom in his chest. Relief. Not joy. Not triumph. But the soft, sacred release of finally letting go of someone who was never meant to be held that tightly in the first place. When Eric returned from Maine, something had changed. It wasn't dramatic, no big declarations, no symbolic moments, but it was real. He started waking up without that knot in his stomach. He stopped flinching at the buzz of his phone. The air felt a little less heavy, the days a little less haunted. Healing doesn't come with fanfare. It's quiet. Subtle. A slow retreat of a storm that had once felt permanent. He went back to the routines he used to find boring morning runs, grocery shopping, reading in bed with a lamp on. But now they were his again. Unshared. Unburdened. He didn't need to account for anyone else's mood or schedule or silences. A few friends reached out cautiously, offering drinks, conversations, space to vent. But he wasn't ready for that yet. He was still reassembling himself, piece by piece. And some pieces were missing, not because Jessica had taken them, but because he'd handed them over willingly, too often, for too long. One evening, while organizing old boxes, he found a photo, one he hadn't seen in years. It was them from the early days. A blurry selfie at a pumpkin patch, cheeks flushed, her head on his shoulder. They looked happy. But now staring at it he realized something strange. He looked happy. She looked staged. Eyes tilted toward the camera, smile perfect, posture poised. Even back then she had been performing. And he had mistaken it for love. That photo went in the trash. Not out of bitterness, but because it was a souvenir from a place that never truly existed. Later that week, Jessica emailed. One last message. The subject line, closure. He didn't open it. Whatever she had to say, it was hers to keep now. Closure didn't come from hearing her confess or justify or reflect. Closure came from not needing any of it. He deleted the email. No ceremony. Just a click. 1 second. Gone. And that felt like the cleanest break of all. The final thread broke without noise. No more letters. No more texts. No more fake apologies wrapped in nostalgia. It was over, not in the theatrical sense people like Jessica seem to live for, but in the way a season ends. Quiet. Complete. Irrevocable. Eric moved into a better apartment 6 weeks later. Nothing fancy. Just lightwood floors, clean lines, and a window that faced the sunrise. He bought furniture he actually liked, not the beige compromise pieces they'd always argued over. He hung art on the walls, picked out new dishes, started cooking again. Small acts of self-ownership. And slowly he realized he was no longer waiting for the pain to stop. It had already passed. Not because it stopped hurting, but because it stopped mattering. One afternoon, he bumped into a former mutual friend at the grocery store, Taylor, someone Jessica used to hang out with when she wanted to feel sophisticated. They made small talk, the kind that dances on the edge of truth without falling in. Then Taylor asked, "Do you ever think about going back?" Eric looked up from the cart, smiled, not bitter, not smug. "Just done." "No," he said. "I don't miss who I had to be to stay." That night, he sat alone on his couch, legs up, music playing softly, jazz, something smooth and wordless. He held a glass of something good, not cheap, and watched the city lights blink slowly outside his window. It wasn't loneliness. It was peace. There was no dramatic conclusion, no final phone call, no grand confrontation. Just the understanding that the person he had once trusted most had become a stranger wearing a familiar face, and that letting go of her wasn't a loss. It was a rescue. From now on, every decision was his again. Every quiet morning. Every book left half-finished on the nightstand. Every moment he didn't have to explain, shrink, or sacrifice. He survived her betrayal. He survived her. And in doing so, he found the one thing she never offered, not really. Himself.